The moment the mercenaries set foot on Korath 7, they felt the shift in the air. The ground beneath their boots wasn't just alien, it was alive. The atmosphere on this planet, renowned for its tranquil beauty and peaceful disposition, felt wrong today. Something was different. Something was waiting. Scanners show nothing. "It's just another mission," said Captain Joran, a towering figure with combat scars across his face, his voice full of hardened arrogance. The mercenaries in his unit nodded, their confidence unshaken. They had conquered war zones across the galaxy. Korath 7 was nothing but another target. Yet, as the shuttle descended through the atmosphere, the tension in the air thickened. The planet's surface, usually serene, appeared different, unnaturally quiet. No signs of the usual wildlife. No bustling colonies. Just eerie silence. "Coordinates for the target are locked in," Lieutenant Rasha spoke up, her fingers tapping the interface in front of her. "Ready for insertion, Captain." Joran's eyes glinted with the sharp focus of a predator as he stared at the planet's surface. "We're on the clock. In and out fast. No surprises. Just eliminate the threat." The team's objective was simple: neutralize the human special forces team stationed on Korath 7. A task that should have been as routine as any other job they had done for their mysterious employer. But for the first time in years, a sliver of doubt wormed its way into Joran's mind. Something about this mission felt different. The team was deployed and scattered across the dense jungle terrain, their advanced combat suits blending seamlessly with the environment. Joran, Rasha, and the others moved with precise efficiency, having done this countless times before, silent, lethal, shadows in the night. But as the hours passed, the mercenaries began to notice something that unsettled even the most seasoned of them. No matter where they went, no matter how deep they ventured into the thick, humid jungle, there was always a sense of being watched. Their thermal sensors registered nothing, but the feeling was there. A whisper, a presence in the shadows. Joran brushed it off. The Deathworlders, humans, they called them, were nothing. He had faced down entire battalions of alien forces, countless assassins and warlords. Humans? A few were dangerous, but none could match the mercenary experience. This job would be over quickly, like all the others. Yet, the deeper they went into the jungle, the more unnerving it became. The flora here was dense, unwelcoming, almost hostile. Massive trees twisted in strange shapes, their gnarled limbs reaching like skeletal hands into the sky. Faint noises echoed in the distance, a whisper of movement, the soft crack of a branch breaking underfoot, but nothing came into view. "Captain." Rasha's voice came over the comms, slightly shaken. "This place doesn't feel right. It's too quiet. We've been on the surface for over 3 hours, and not a single sign of life. No locals, no wildlife." Joran's jaw tightened, the uneasy sensation gnawing at him. "Keep moving. We've been paid to finish this. And we finish it." The team pressed on, their footfall silent and synchronized. But as they neared their target, an isolated compound on the outskirts of a mountain range, Joran's nerves began to fray. He felt it, too. There was something wrong with this mission, something that even the trained instincts of the galaxy's best mercenaries couldn't dismiss. Then it happened. A flash of movement. Just a flicker, but fast, too fast. In an instant, the feeling of being watched became the certainty of it. A human figure appeared in the distance, crouched low, moving with eerie precision. It wasn't running. It was tracking them. Rasha's voice came again, tinged with disbelief. "Did you see that?" "I saw it," Joran growled, reaching for his blaster. "Stay sharp." They circled the compound, every sense on high alert, but the figure remained elusive. Then it appeared again, closer this time, standing at the edge of a cliff, watching them with unnerving calm. A human, alone. And despite their advanced weapons and superior training, Joran's gut clenched. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The humans were nothing. And yet, somehow, they were already being hunted, not the hunters. "Get ready," Joran hissed, his voice low. "This won't be easy." What had begun as another straightforward mission was now spiraling into something far more dangerous. The first lesson the mercenaries would learn on Korath 7 was simple. Underestimate the humans, and they would make you regret it. The first shot was fired without warning. It came from nowhere, silent and deadly. One of the mercenaries, Sergeant Kale, dropped to the ground with a guttural scream, clutching his shoulder as blood oozed from the gaping wound. He hadn't even seen the shooter. They hadn't seen the shooter. Ambush! Jorn yelled into the comms, his voice filled with a sudden urgency. The team scattered, diving behind rocks and trees for cover as the surrounding jungle seemed to come alive with hostile intent. For a moment, the mercenaries couldn't tell where the shots were coming from. The jungle was thick, the undergrowth a labyrinth of shadows. The humans, if that's who they were, knew the terrain better than any of them had anticipated. But the real shock wasn't the ambush, it was the speed. The humans weren't just fighting. They were playing with them. Status report. Jorn barked, his chest tight as the crack of another sniper shot rang through the air, followed by the dull thud of a mercenary's body hitting the ground. A new voice came through the comms, panicked. "We can't see them, Captain. There's nothing here." The line went silent as the mercenary's voice was cut off, swallowed by the jungle's dense canopy. Jorn's hand tightened around his blaster, the realization sinking in like cold steel. They were being hunted, not by an army, not by a large force, but by a handful of humans. A handful of humans who understood how to fight on their terms no mercenary could survive in. "Get into position now," Jorn shouted. "We're not letting them take us out like this." But as the team moved, the strategy they had always relied on, superior firepower, overwhelming numbers, and brute strength, began to fail them. Each time they thought they had a bead on one of the attackers, they were wrong. The humans were faster, more unpredictable than they could ever be. They moved like shadows, disappearing and reappearing in places where they should have had no chance to be. Rasha, who had once prided herself on her sharpshooting skills, found herself staring in disbelief at the spot where she'd just taken cover. The human sniper had been there, crouched behind a tree. One moment, she was looking at the scope, aiming precisely. The next, the human was gone. "The hell is going on?" she growled, wiping sweat from her brow as her pulse quickened. "This isn't just an ambush," Jorn said, his tone colder now. "It's a game, and we're the prey." The team had faced ambushes before, had fought on countless battlefields across the galaxy, but never had they encountered a force like this. The humans were unlike any enemy they had fought. No alien mercenary force, no insurgent rebel, no organized military unit had ever made them feel this vulnerable. The mercenaries were trained to adapt, to improvise, but against these humans, it was different. Every move they made was countered before they even realized they'd made it. The environment, the terrain, they weren't just things to survive anymore. They were part of the attack. "They know this planet like it's their backyard," Rasha muttered. "We're just walking into their traps." Jorn clenched his fists, trying to suppress the rising tide of frustration. The planet's terrain was not just alien. It was hostile in ways they couldn't even comprehend. Dense jungles full of carnivorous wildlife, violent weather patterns, and unforgiving landscapes. But none of that should matter. The mercenaries had fought in worse conditions. They had conquered planets with extreme climates and dangerous predators. And yet, none of that seemed to matter against the humans. Because the humans were the predators. One of the mercenaries, Ensign Moreau, called out over the comms, "There's something wrong. I can't get a signal. There's nothing in the air. No satellites, no communication. They've jammed us." A sickening silence followed. "Damn it," Jorn swore. He glanced at his squad, their eyes wide with a new fear, something they had never experienced before. They were trapped, isolated. For the first time in his career, Jorn realized they weren't fighting an enemy. They were fighting an environment that knew how to kill them. The Deathworlders had an instinct that was second nature to them, honed through survival on a world filled with the deadliest life forms in the galaxy. This planet, Korath 7, was nothing compared to Earth, but the humans' ability to adapt was unparalleled. "They're special forces," Rasha said quietly, a mix of awe and terror in her voice. "I thought it was just a myth." But now, Jorn didn't need to hear more. They had underestimated the humans, not just because of their numbers, but because of the very essence of what they were. Humans were survivors. Death was their constant companion, and they knew how to make it their ally. And as the mercenaries picked off one by one, they came to understand why no one dared to mess with Deathworlder Special Forces. The quiet crack of a rifle shot sent another mercenary crashing to the ground. His scream was cut short as the jungle around them seemed to swallow the sound whole. Joran's breath came in heavy gasps as his eyes scanned the treeline, the pulse of his heart echoing in his ears. The worst part was the silence that followed. No triumphant shout, no victory cry from the humans. Just silence, hanging in the air like a threat. Damn it. Joran hissed under his breath, crouching behind a fallen log. His tactical screen flickered, overloaded with data they couldn't interpret fast enough. We can't keep playing like this. His team had been whittled down to a handful of survivors. The jungle, once so familiar to them, now felt like an alien trap. Every direction was a possible ambush. Every noise could be their last. Rasha, her hand pressed tightly to her rifle, turned to Joran, her face pale with the growing realization. We've been here for hours, Captain, and we've lost half our men. This isn't just an ambush, it's a strategy. Joran swallowed hard. He couldn't argue with her. It was true. Everything they had been trained to handle, superior weapons, terrain manipulation, tactical maneuvers, had been countered by these humans. And every move they made had been anticipated. Where are they? Joran growled, his voice barely a whisper. They're always one step ahead of us, Rasha muttered, her eyes darting around. They blend into the jungle like they're a part of it. These Deathworlders. They know everything. The words hung heavy in the air. Deathworlders. It was a name they'd heard whispered in the darkest corners of the galaxy. Humans, supposedly the most dangerous species in existence. A race that had fought and survived on a world where every living thing was a threat. But they had never taken the stories seriously. They were just that, stories. Myths meant to scare enemies into submission. Now, those myths were biting them in the ass. The mercenaries had fought across dozens of deadly worlds, planets with volcanic landscapes, ones teeming with bloodthirsty beasts, and even hostile environments where the very air could kill. But none of that had prepared them for the ruthless efficiency of a Deathworlder. These humans didn't just survive in the most dangerous environments, they thrived in them. And it was becoming painfully clear, this wasn't a simple contract job. This wasn't a matter of cleaning up an isolated squad of soldiers. The humans had set a trap, and the mercenaries had walked straight into it. The hum of the jungle was deafening. Even the wind through the leaves seemed to be mocking them. Joran's fingers tightened around his blaster as he heard the faintest snap of a twig behind him. His instincts screamed at him to move, but he held still, waiting for the inevitable. Out of nowhere, a voice echoed through the comms. It was distorted, barely audible, but the words cut through the tension like a knife. You're out of your league. Joran's blood ran cold. The human voice on the other end didn't sound desperate. It didn't sound like it was even trying to intimidate him. It sounded casual. The words hung there like a taunt, waiting for them to make a mistake. We can't keep up with this. Rasha's voice was breaking. They know this planet better than we ever could. The realization hit Joran like a punch to the gut. The mercenaries had always relied on their superior technology, their ability to manipulate any environment they found themselves in. But the humans didn't need that. They were the environment. The Deathworlders had trained their minds and bodies to adapt in ways that no alien force could replicate. This isn't just a mission, Joran muttered, his eyes narrowed with a newfound understanding. This is a test. They're not just trying to kill us, they're showing us how outclassed we are. He looked at Rasha, his mind racing as the plan they'd so carefully laid out began to crumble. We've been playing their game, thinking we could beat them at their own tactics. But these humans don't play games. They own them. The jungle seemed to close in around them. The mercenaries had been too slow, too confident. They had underestimated their enemies, and now they were paying the price for it. No more arrogance. No more easy victories. They weren't just facing an enemy anymore. They were facing the very thing they feared the most, a force that could adapt faster than they ever could. And as Jorn took one last look at his squad, he realized that in this game, they weren't the predators. They were the prey. The moment the first of the mercenaries surrendered, Jorn knew it was over. The jungle had already claimed for more of his team. The survivors, desperate and broken, had retreated into the nearest bunker. Jorn stood with his back against the wall, staring at the cold metal floor. The fight had drained him. The endless ambushes, the unrelenting tension. It had worn him down in ways he couldn't explain. But it wasn't the physical losses that had broken him. It was the realization that they had no control left. "You've been outplayed," Rasha whispered, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. "By a few humans. This is not how it's supposed to be." Jorn didn't answer. He couldn't. His mind was still trying to piece together the puzzle. How could this be happening? How could a squad of humans, special forces, yes, but still just a handful, have brought them to this point? They were the best mercenaries in the galaxy, trained for every kind of warfare. And yet, here they were, hiding, broken, cornered by the very species they had underestimated. The mercenaries had always been paid to win, to be the unstoppable force in any conflict. But this was different. The Deathworlders didn't need to fight them in the traditional sense. They didn't need advanced weaponry, fancy tactics, or overwhelming numbers. They simply needed to survive, and that was something the mercenaries were failing to do. A faint beep interrupted his thoughts. It was the communication system. Jorn's eyes flicked to the screen, which had been dead for hours. The message that came through was short, chilling. "Asterisk, we're coming for you. Asterisk." No signature. No threat. Just a promise. A promise from the humans. Rasha's eyes widened as she stared at the message. "They're taunting us." Jorn wasn't sure anymore if it was taunting. It felt more like a statement of fact. These humans were not like any enemy they had faced. They weren't playing to win. They were playing for something else entirely. They weren't just killing them. They were teaching them. Every move the mercenaries made, every misstep, was countered with surgical precision. The Deathworlders weren't just better at surviving. They were better at adapting. They were proving it on every inch of the planet, showing the mercenaries the one thing they had never truly understood. Survival wasn't about strength. It was about knowledge. "They know the land like it's part of them," Rasha said, more to herself than to Jorn. "The jungle, the animals, the traps, it's like they've been living here for centuries." Jorn's mind clicked into place. They have. Earth is a death world. Everything they've learned, everything they are, has come from that planet. A planet where every day is a fight for survival. A planet where you either adapt or die. It was the ultimate truth about humans. They weren't just soldiers. They were products of a world that had forced them to evolve in ways no other species could understand. The jungle didn't frighten them. It was their home. The constant threat of death wasn't a curse. It was a way of life. Jorn ran a hand through his hair, pacing now. "This is why the galaxy fears them." "What do we do now?" Rasha asked, her voice small. Jorn stopped, staring at the dim lights of the bunker. For the first time, doubt entered his mind. They were mercenaries. Their job was simple: survive, kill, and get paid. But this wasn't about survival. This wasn't about a contract. This was about something deeper. Something no mercenary could fight. In the distance, he heard the unmistakable crack of branches snapping, the faintest rustle of leaves. Jorn's pulse quickened. "Get ready," he ordered, his voice tight. "They're here." Moments later, the first of the humans appeared in the entrance to the bunker, a lone figure cloaked in shadow. No guns raised, no threats made, just a human standing in the doorway, watching them. It wasn't a soldier. It wasn't an enemy. It was a person. And in that moment, Jorn understood something that sent a cold shiver down his spine. The humans didn't just fight to kill. They fought to change. The human's voice cut through the silence, low and controlled. "You're not supposed to be here." Jorn tensed, raising his weapon, but the human didn't flinch. The quiet authority in their tone was unsettling. They weren't afraid. They weren't desperate. They had no reason to be. This wasn't just another mission. This was a test. And Joran realized, with sickening clarity, that they were the ones who had failed. "We weren't meant to stop you," the human said, almost as if reading his thoughts. "You were meant to learn." The word sank in like a blade. The humans had been playing with them, not as enemies, but as teachers. They had tested every assumption, every belief the mercenaries held. And now it was clear. They were here to show the mercenaries just how outclassed they were. Fear, respect. Joran had never thought they could be taught so brutally by someone so small. But as the humans stood in front of him, he finally understood. The greatest lesson wasn't about fighting. It was about understanding the power of survival. And it was the one lesson the mercenaries could never hope to learn. The ground trembled beneath Joran's feet as the final battle drew near. The mercenaries had been pushed to the brink, each member of the squad exhausted, broken, and on the edge of defeat. They had lost more than half their number, and every trap they had set for the humans had turned against them. Now, the final gambit was in motion. "We either make a stand or we die here," Joran said, his voice hard and resolute. His eyes were bloodshot, his body battered, but his spirit was unyielding. The mercenaries had been humiliated, taught a brutal lesson in survival. But Joran was determined to finish this, to prove that they could still defeat the humans. Rasha, her face as grim as his, nodded. "We fight then. But we need to make it count." The plan was simple, if reckless. They would draw the humans into a confrontation, using the remaining survivors to bait them into a final kill zone. Once the humans were trapped, the remaining mercenaries would strike with everything they had, overwhelming them with superior firepower and sheer numbers. "We have to force them into the open," Joran muttered. "No more shadows, no more traps. We take them head on." The plan, however, was based on one assumption, that they were still the predators, that the humans could still be hunted, caught, and killed. But deep down, Joran knew that wasn't true. The humans were already in control. They had been from the start. And no amount of brute force was going to change that. As the mercenaries set the trap, the weight of their failure pressed down on Joran. He had led them into this, into the heart of the jungle, into a battle they couldn't win. But there was no turning back now. The only option was to fight, to give everything they had, and hope for the best. Hours passed in tense silence, the jungle around them eerily still. Joran could feel the presence of the humans watching, waiting. It was a feeling that had become all too familiar. They weren't hiding. They were just there, always one step ahead, always waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Rasha, crouching beside him, whispered, "They're close. I can feel them." "Stay sharp," Joran replied, his heart pounding in his chest. "They won't make it easy." The trap was set, the kill zone prepared. The mercenaries huddled together, weapons ready, their breaths shallow as they waited for the humans to make their move. And then, like a whisper on the wind, the first of them appeared. A shadow in the distance, moving swiftly and silently. "Now," Joran barked, and the remaining mercenaries unleashed a torrent of gunfire, lighting up the jungle with an explosion of energy. The humans responded instantly, ducking behind trees and rocks, their movements fluid and deliberate. Joran's heart raced as the battle erupted around them. But something was wrong. The humans weren't responding like Joran had expected. They weren't running. They weren't panicking. They were focused. They were working together, using their surroundings to their advantage. They weren't trying to overpower the mercenaries. They were outmaneuvering them. Joran's mind raced. It was too late. They had fallen into the same trap they had set for the humans, and now they were the ones being hunted. A sudden explosion rocked the area as one of their grenades detonated in the distance. Joran barely had time to react before a flash of movement caught his eye, a human soldier, sprinting toward him with inhuman speed. Joran's rifle fired, but the human was already gone, vanishing back into the jungle like a shadow. "This isn't how it was supposed to go," Rasha muttered, her voice filled with disbelief. "We're not winning this fight." Joran's hands trembled as he reloaded his weapon. He had led them here, led them into a fight they couldn't win. He had believed in their strength, their superiority. But now, faced with the raw reality of what the humans could do, the truth was undeniable. They were outmatched. "Get to the fallback point," Joran ordered, his voice cold. "We're retreating. There's no shame in surviving. Get out now." One by one, the mercenaries began to break formation, moving toward the extraction point. But the humans were already on their heels. Every step they took was shadowed by the relentless pursuit of the Deathworlders. And in that final moment, as Joran turned to face the advancing enemy, he understood the full scope of their defeat. The humans hadn't just won the battle. They had taught the mercenaries a new lesson. It wasn't about strength. It wasn't about numbers. It was about something far more dangerous. It was about surviving. And in the end, that was the only thing the mercenaries could never do better than the Deathworlders. Joran's chest heaved as he stumbled through the dense undergrowth, the jungle closing in on him. Sweat mixed with the blood on his hands as he clutched his rifle, the last weapon he had left. His team was shattered, broken in body and spirit. The humans had shown them no mercy, and now they were being hunted like animals. But even in the face of certain death, something in Joran refused to give in. He wasn't ready to die like this. Not yet. The mercenaries had failed. There was no other way to say it. Their final stand had been crushed, not by superior firepower or overwhelming numbers, but by the sheer will to survive. The Deathworlders, humans, had proven that no amount of technology or training could compete with their ability to adapt. They had been playing a different game entirely, and Joran had been too blind to see it. As he pushed his way through the thick foliage, the distant sounds of his pursuers reached his ears. He could feel them closing in, the weight of their presence like a tightening noose around his neck. Every step he took felt heavier, but he refused to slow down. He would not give them the satisfaction of seeing him break. But the reality was unavoidable. His legs were shaking, his mind clouded with exhaustion, and his body screamed for rest. He had no backup, no extraction. His team was gone. The enemy was everywhere, and there was no escape. Get to the extraction point. Joran had ordered earlier. But it was a lie. He knew there was no extraction. The humans had cut off all their routes, leaving them with no place to run, no place to hide. A sudden rustle to his right snapped him out of his thoughts. Joran spun, raising his rifle, but it was too late. The human soldier was already there, standing mere feet away. His rifle was aimed directly at Joran's chest, his posture casual, unhurried. Joran's heart slammed in his chest as he struggled to raise his weapon, but the human was faster. With a smooth motion, the soldier lowered his rifle and raised his hands in mock surrender. "We're not here to kill you," the soldier said, his voice calm and collected. "Not unless we have to." Joran's mind raced, trying to process the situation. The humans had already killed so many of his men. They had destroyed everything. And now, this soldier was talking like they were friends? He didn't trust it. He couldn't trust it. "You think I'm going to surrender?" Joran spat, his hands tightening around the rifle. "You think I'm just going to roll over?" The human's expression didn't change. "No, I don't think you'll surrender. I think you'll listen." Joran's finger twitched on the trigger, but the soldier didn't flinch. He was calm, too calm. And in that moment, Joran understood something he hadn't realized before. This was not a threat. This was an invitation. "We don't want to fight you," the soldier continued. "We don't need to fight you. You don't belong here anymore. You failed, Joran. But we can offer you a way out. You can join us. You can survive." Joran's breath caught in his throat as the weight of the words hit him. The humans weren't just talking about surrender. They were offering something else. They were offering survival. But at what cost? Was it worth joining them? Would he lose himself in the process? The soldier's gaze softened, but there was no pity in his eyes. Only truth. "You're not the first to make this mistake, and you won't be the last. But if you're willing to learn, if you're willing to adapt, we can show you a way to survive." Joran's mind spun as he processed the offer. The reality of what he had just been told settled in like a heavy weight. The humans weren't just warriors. They weren't just soldiers. They were something else entirely. They were the future. And if Joran wanted to live, to be part of that future, he had to face the truth. The truth that had been staring him in the face all along. The mercenaries had lost, and the humans had won. Not just this battle, but the entire war. Not through force, but through sheer will to survive. "You're asking me to join you," Joran said, his voice barely above a whisper. "After everything we've done?" The soldier nodded, his expression unwavering. "We don't care about the past, Joran. We care about the future. And we know that humanity will be the ones to lead it. You have a choice. You can walk away and die here, or you can walk with us and live." The words hung in the air like a promise, a decision that Joran couldn't ignore. The fight had ended for him. The mercenaries had failed, and now it was time for something new. A new era. With a final glance at the soldier, Joran slowly lowered his rifle. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing. The galaxy was changing, and he would have to change with it. As the soldier extended his hand, Joran made his choice. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about becoming something new. And in that moment, Joran realized that the true fight had just begun.